hello, everyone. So I'm here with Tao Prompts today. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself and your channel just so the people today or the people in the future kind of know what's going on?
Yeah, so I'm from the Tao Prompts channel. And so I also make some AR content on Midjourney prompts and how to get like the best photos from Midjourney and things like that. So recently I've been doing more AI video stuff, but I'm excited to get back into Midjourney, man. We got some big releases coming up in 6.2 and version 7, so I'm excited.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I am also really excited. We can actually start there because I think the big thing is now every single person actually has access to the website. So the alpha site that used to belong to just some people, now everyone is able to use it. They kind of talk through how to add, I think in this video,
You can
a
change it. Go to the organize.
top hat to an owl here, and or no, maybe that was this one. So this is just talking about the site in general. But the alpha site is exciting and powerful, and I think it's one of the coolest ways to interact with Midjourney. Um,
It's a temporary free trial, right?
and yeah, and users who have never created a Midjourney account before, if you're a new Midjourney user, you actually get a free trial now too. So they're saying, um, or maybe this is no longer true. It was at that moment, but now
Yeah, I guess too many people signed up
too
and
many people
they
must have
ran
signed
out
up
of
and
GPU.
ruined it. Yeah. But yeah, so the point of the stream today is we are going to kind of talk to you guys about how to create consistent characters in all kinds of different situations and see if we can like answer sort of the most asked questions. I know on my channel I get a ton of questions under my consistent characters like slide or yeah videos, and I think people are really interested. You're not a new member, but you have 25 free credits. Great, Ken. Yeah, so I think a lot of people really like one of the coolest things about AI art is that you can like tell the story you want to tell, and having a consistent character that you can actually generate is important if you're like making a little book or making a little story, or even if you just want to create a specific person that you are imagining a character design. Be able to create them over and over again is the most fun way to interact with things, but it's also like really hard. Do you want to talk a little bit about character weights for, or sorry, character reference for a second? They added a feature a little bit ago, and I think it's currently the best way to create a consistent character, but it's not perfect. Do you want to kind of take that over and I'll
Yeah,
see
I
if I
know
can.
consistent characters can be really frustrating because like I get a lot of questions like I uploaded this image of my character and it didn't work, or
Yeah.
I tried to generate a character and the or I try to generate a consistent character and all the images I get look nothing like it. But I think we're going to give you some tips and suggestions for how to get the most consistent characters for sure. What feature were you talking about? Are you talking about the new
I'm talking
deep learning
about
tool?
character reference right now. So just like the idea that you can upload a picture and try to get that character out of it, cuz I feel like it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, but it's a little interesting kind of exactly when that happens.
Yeah, I think one thing that people get frustrated with is they want to just upload a picture of the character and have the AI generate it exactly. But you do need to kind of massage the prompts a little bit and use some of the in-painting tools and things like that to get it to look exactly the way you want. I mean, if you just like upload an image of one of your references and then type in a prompt like generate this person doing something, there's a good chance it's not going to work exactly the way you want.
Yeah, so I have like this owl detective here. I think you can see, and definitely stream can see. If I wanted to create this owl detective again, the theory of CREF is that this just works, right? So if I say, hey, photo of an owl detective, I don't know, he can be doing something, or in a study looking for clues. And I don't know exactly how this will turn out, but kind of you can kind of see that it doesn't necessarily create the same exact character as the one we had, right? Like this guy,
By the way,
this owl. Yeah, go ahead.
do you want to mention how to use the character consistency with the image references
Yeah,
for someone who hasn't used it before?
yeah, that's a great point. So what I did just now is I knew I had created an owl character at some point. I typed search up here in the top right. If you're new to this interface, obviously you might not know that. What you can actually do in this taskbar, you can drag an image right into the placement. And then to set it as a character reference, there's three little dots here. This first one, I don't know if you guys can see it at this zoom, but it's actually a little person, and it's the character reference type. This one here, I believe, is the style reference, and this one at the end is as an image prompt. So style references control, like, if you had a watercolor painting, it would make the thing you created also a watercolor painting. Image prompts are something that's been around in Midjourney for a long, long time. And it sort of follows both the content and the style, sort of the image you upload. It's a little bit funky. But today, I think we're focusing on this one, character reference, which in theory is supposed to let you generate the same character as the one you had. But obviously, if we look at the owl that we generated, even between these two owls, we have like different vibes, right? One is this kind of like cartoony eyeball, wide nose, these got like hairs coming out, or wide face and these hairs coming out of its beak. And then this one doesn't have the same like hairs. It's still sort of wide, but it's like a different eyes and different glasses and things that don't really match what we've created. And like all four of these are different enough that I think people end up disappointed a lot when it's like not this owl, which, you know, doesn't really have those hairs, is not quite as wide a face, and just sort of these dark, mysterious eyes, which maybe you would have expected if you just created this character all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that for sure. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with something simple like a person?
Yeah, let's kind of come off of kind of what we have here and instead go to maybe creating a a person of some kind. So um obviously there's lots of different ways to create a person, and you guys might already have one that you've generated yourself or that you have really, right? So we can talk for a second. I actually have a video where I created myself in Midjourney, and it relatively consistently created me. And to create these character references, all I did was actually upload 5 pictures of myself standing in front of a white wall. And it even got the shirt I was wearing. But um, people tend to say I got a little lucky, right? It's like my face happens to sort of match the Midjourney vibe. And I think there's some truth to that. But it also, if you kind of go back in time until like when I was creating these, here, let me just like copy this prompt, come over
Do you
here and
do you want to like zoom in a little bit because it's kind of hard to see the prompt.
yeah, let's see. Is that a little easier for you guys?
Yeah, yeah, that's much better.
Cool. Um, so, you know, a lot of these, like I started trying to create them and I was experimenting quite a bit until I got closer and closer to my own face. And, you know, a lot of things really didn't work at all. And so, you know, these are kind of cherry picked results. I got better at it once I found a prompt format that worked for me. But a lot of them, when they were short prompts, they really didn't match me nearly as closely as once I sort of figured out a prompt format that matched what I was going for. Because
Okay,
CREF, yeah, go ahead.
I kind of want to know what you did because I'm
Yeah.
one of those people where when I try to put it in my face, it doesn't generate anything that looks like me, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. So let's kind of here. I'm gonna copy this prompt, and let's see for a second. We'll kind of come back to create. What happens when you do something like a photo of a man, right? Because this is sort of the default that most people try. Is I have some character references and I have a simple prompt, and I'm just gonna go for it.
Okay, so
And
you uploaded 5 images of yourself and set all of those as a character reference.
all of those as character references. I copied the prompt from before rather than dragging them in again. And these actually, you know,
Yeah,
aren't
that one doesn't. There's a couple that don't.
they don't look like me very well, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's like a bunch of different versions of something that could have worked, but in this case, kind of didn't. And so, like, how do we resolve this problem? One of the things that I kind of figured out is that actually the Midjourney look, you run into problems because, you know, if I did this character, sorry, let me copy this prompt again. Here, trash, do this whole prompt. And that's this button down here. I just clicked use and I got to use the whole prompt. If I do a photo of a man just in general versus a photo of a man in the gym, you'll notice that Midjourney knows something about people in gyms and they tend to be a little bit buffer, a little bit stronger, maybe a little bit more angular physique.
Hmm.
And it like this is kind of a different guy than this guy. And
Yeah, it
so
looks like you've been working out.
it looks like I've been working out. I got to look at those biceps there.
Right.
And what I sort of discovered, and this is something that I probably discovered a little before this feature came out, but really what Midjourney is a set of inputs. And CREF is just sort of another way to fine tune your input. But to kind of get closer to yourself, you tend to need to like come off what Midjourney tends to do with just a prompt like this one, because in my opinion, you know, like it tends to add that like perfect shave and just that little stubble of beard and the things that Midjourney does to make your characters look attractive. And to kind of get around that, so that it actually looks like a regular guy, I actually went into ChatGPT. I have this GPT that I've created called my Glibetry Consistent Character Assistant. And it's something that I wrote that writes a prompt that makes characters that are a little bit more candid and normal.
Mhm.
It takes advantage of multi-prompt. And so I'm going to say a guy with blue or a blue shirt, blue striped shirt, brown eyes, and dark brown hair. Create 5 prompts for him in one in the gym, one at the park, one playing trumpet, and one
Swimming.
swimming.
The swimming one
I like
with
that.
the blue striped shirt on.
Yeah. So if we create these sort of, or if we tell Midjourney to create these images, and right now there's something wrong with how it is copying what I'm creating, but it doesn't matter that much. Normally it makes a code block for me to make it a little bit easier, but things do change. Now, if I keep these image prompts, right? Or actually, here, let's erase this. I'm going to keep this whole prompt and then erase it and provide this. I'm going to take out style raw because I don't think 6.1 needs it as badly.
So what would you say was different about this prompt than the one you used
Yeah.
earlier?
So this prompt, number one, it does a good job at focusing on the face of the character. When you're looking at a consistent character, I find that the face is the most important aspect for Midjourney to get right. And so having a close-up photo that is well lit, I think is going to be like important to get a consistent, normal looking feel. And then what I actually did in the rest of this prompt, and so you can kind of, I'm going to start generating it while we read it a little bit closer. This is a multi-prompt. So here I've added some details, making it feel a little bit more candid, right? Highlighting the beauty of imperfections. And this is just like more likely to look up, and this may overdo it a little bit, but
Hmm.
more likely to look like a regular guy. I also want to make sure I have sharp details in the background, because if I'm going to expand this picture, I want to be able to see more of it. We'll talk about expanding the picture a little more in a second. But I also have this negative weighted or uh, prompt saying beautiful, right? So we're like using words like beautiful. So I don't want it to look like a painting. I don't want it to look artistic. And I don't want the bokeh that comes behind a camera making it feel like really artsy.
Right.
Because
So
when,
that's not a negative prompt. That's like a multi-prompt that's
yeah,
has a
so
negative
this
attached to
is
it.
one part of the prompt with a negative weight to it. So the blur has a negative weight to it, and the artistic bokeh with beautiful ambience has a negative weight. So it's a -1 right there, a -2 right there, and a negative or a +1 centering the image so that I can see the face very well.
Can you
And
explain how the multi-prompting works?
sure. So every prompt that you write has piece or every prompt that you write, typically Midjourney treats as a prompt with weight 1. And that's useful most of the time to say, hey, I want to have a like grassy field. If you're generating a grassy field, that's what you're actually doing, is generating one prompt with a grassy field, like with weight 1. But
Hmm.
what you could do is you could say a grassy field and a ball in it. And this is sort of a classic Midjourney prompt. But if instead, for a putting the ball in a grassy field, you could have something to the effect of a mix between a grassy field and a close-up photo of a basketball.
Okay, so
And
the grass field with the ball in it basically makes a soccer ball, in
right.
a field of
And
green grass.
this may do that too, but it sometimes doesn't. Right? Take this. It sort of looks like a grassy field. I'm going to say that because it doesn't really at all. But like, instead of this being a court, or instead of this being actually sand, which it might be trying to, it made it like a little green. It's kind of funky, right? And this one, where's the basketball? It did it's not really sure. These two prompts, it's trying to mix them together into one idea. And so it's easier to mix them together into one idea if you give something a weight. And so this is where weights come in. You could say, hey, I want a grassy field and a close-up photo of a basketball, but I mostly want a close-up photo of a basketball. And it's going to be much better at creating 4 close-up photos of a basketball because I've given this 4 times the weight as this. And there might just be some grass in the image now.
Now, it looks like it's definitely making a basketball.
Yeah, and it's like not following the grassy field as well. It's a little bit funky because like when we do art, we're not doing math. Like when human beings are trying to figure out this stuff, it's like, hey, if we're gonna draw a basketball, we're either drawing a basketball or we're drawing grass, right? And if this image probably should have been basketball in it, but these AI, it's doing a math problem every time it's generating an image. It's saying, hey, I have some idea what these words mean, and I have some idea what these words mean. And now I'm kind of mashing stuff together to create an image, right? So if I was like, hey, I also, on top of this, right? So like this is sort of what you'd expect from the Midjourney image, and this might be just like you'd sort of want it to be closer up. But if we take this prompt and add like just the color red at weight 2, it'll start to like mix in redness sort of all throughout the scene, and it's going to be kind of wild.
Okay.
Right? It's like it wants the whole thing to be more red. And then it does diffusion to create our basketball. And so the grassy field kind of went away. But now it's kind of funky if we take out the basketball. And we have mostly red, but a little bit of a grassy field. We're going to have this like red grass weirdness that's going to show up. And, you know, it's not what you might expect if you're like, oh, red, you know, red field will look different, right? Just the words.
Yeah, the example for multi-prompting I tend to like the most is a hot dog. Because if you try to generate a hot dog, it'll generate, like a healthy or non-healthy snack. But if you use multi-prompting between those two words, it used to generate a dog that was on fire.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. It's and a very succinct way to talk about it.
So it's essentially a better way to blend multiple concepts together.
Yes, and there, what I've done here with this image while I'm creating multiple characters is talking about the style of the image that I want. And I'm using multi-prompts to make it more candid and to have it shy away from the classic Midjourney style. And so this was a little more likely to land to have, I'd say, one of these look mostly like I do, or mostly like these images looked at the time.
Well,
Um,
you'll be the judge of that, I guess.
yeah, you know.
I do think they look a little bit more similar for sure.
And if we kind of go back to ChatGPT, grab another one of these prompts and paste it in. Um, oops, this is without my my custom images, so it won't
Oh
look like me
wow,
at
what
all.
happened?
I didn't.
That's what happens when you don't use the
That's
character reference.
exactly what happens when you don't use your character references. I'll hide this as not to confuse people.
Do you prefer using a negative multi-prompt or just a negative prompt?
Midjourney doesn't let you go any less than you like you can't have just a negative prompt in your text, right? So you can't just the sum of all of your prompt sections needs to be a positive number. So like 3 minus 2 minus 1 plus 1 is positive 1, and it needs to be at least positive 1 at the end of that addition.
Right. What I'm saying is, do you like using like a -1 like Photoshop or like -1 like photo brushed or just dash dash no like Photoshop or dash dash no photo brush?
I find that typing in one of these, like with a longer negative, lets you be a little bit more explicit with what you're doing. No
Mhm.
blur works, but because I have like 3 weight, I'd actually want it to be a higher negative weight to kind of balance out. And dash dash no, I think sets it to negative 0.5, not zero
Mhm.
point 0.05, negative 0.5, which
Okay.
I don't think is enough for most of the things that I do in the way that I personally write prompts. But, you know, other people write prompts differently and it still can work. Um, the other nice thing about putting in the, uh, writing it out as a part of a multi prompt rather than just kind of leaving it be, is, or using like dash dash no, is that it makes it easy or more possible to write entire sentences. What I find, and kind of to finish up this example, it's much easier to use multi prompts when all of the multi prompts kind of completely define an image. One of the problems with this here is that red creates people, right? Like if you just prompt the word red, you're gonna get kind of random things. Whereas if you have a longer prompt than just kind of that word, um, you're gonna create, specifically a right, like a red grassy
Hmm.
field, and then a field with a basketball in it. You're going to be able to solve like a lot of the classic things. And then you could put a negative prompt of not just like green, but something like green grass, right? So, by the way, when I'm leaving these blank here, it will always default to one, um,
Hmm.
in case anybody needed to know that. And so now we can kind of, we're avoiding the concept that you would get if you just generated green grass. And now it starts to look like a little funky. Obviously I didn't it didn't create an actual basketball for whatever reason. I'm sure if I raised the prompt here to be a higher percentage of what we were generating, we would get that. But see how like unusual these scenes become because you've generated something using that negative weight there.
Yeah, what would happen if you didn't use that negative weight? Like let's say you just didn't have that negative green grass.
Yeah, so my guess, again, this is sort of all and a little bit out of the scope of what we're doing, but what I think is going to happen here is that we're we're going to get a redder scene, but it's not going to be kind of the wild grass. And this one did sort of come up wild, but there was no basketball reference at all. Whereas the one with a basketball, it's just like more red, like a red field, sort of like as an idea, it like uses, but but because it's sort of used to grass in general, like the word grass meaning like alive, right? It tries to make it a little more realistic. So the red comes in the oil painting or something like this. Whereas when I took away green grass, it had to reimagine like the whole thing about the world. And that's one of the powers of negative prompting is like if you take away some of the classic words like, you know, artistic from its like it's not allowed to sort of work towards artistic, you end up getting what looks closer to a normal picture.
Hmm.
And one of the things I do want to talk about before we get too much farther is we're noticing that all of these that I'm generating are really like keeping my, at least I guess I asked specifically for blue stripes. Um, but if we
Yeah, it seemed
didn't,
to change your shirt.
yeah, and we have some control over how well it, one of the best things you can do to change the clothes on the character is to specifically say it. And so this is with blue stripes, and ChatGPT just happened to write that for me. But if I said a blue striped shirt, it would actually be much more likely to follow what I asked for, or the reference image and what I was wearing, just because this prompt asked for something else. It made Midjourney have trouble actually following it. But one of the things that I wanted to mention is that we have this parameter character weight, which does let us control how heavily Midjourney takes into account um, aspects of the reference image. It tries to still keep a consistent character as the one you uploaded, even if it's low, right? So it's like even if it's as low as 10, and I think the values are 0 to 100, we can actually do a bunch of them because I think people
Yeah,
might
so
find
I
it
think the
interesting.
default value is 100, which is the maximum for the character weight. But you can lower it. So like if you use the default value, it'll try to control everything like the hairstyle, the clothing. It'll try to mapping as much of your reference image as it can. But if you want like a different hairstyle or different clothing or like a different background, you can lower it, the character weight to like 0 or 20 or 30. and it'll give you some more creative control over the other aspects of the image. And mostly just copy over the face instead of like the clothing and the hair and stuff.
So I just started generating a bunch of them so we can sort of see the variation. So this was 100, and it tried to follow this kind of concept as closely as possible. And as you get down to 10, it doesn't look nearly as much like me. But as we kind of work our way up, the swoop of my hair in the way that Midjourney tries to copy it, it sort of moves on from. Um, it's hard to describe, and I'm not sure it's as powerful as the Midjourney team hopes it would be. But we're kind of up to 30 here, and these kind of look about right. At 40, we're like getting to be this is the same character, and then 50, we're like going a little bit closer. It's really not that different.
It's hard to
And
tell. It's kind of subtle.
that it's that's really what I've noticed the most is that I can't reliably use CW to get the changes that I'm after. It's I think definitely better to use like if you want a character that looks just like the one you have, it's better to use a high value and also write a prompt that really matches. And so it defaulting to 100 tends to be like at least in my experience tends to be like what I write the most amount of time. Um let's see. So if you're if you have reference images, CREF is pretty nice. I find, and we can kind of do this too, use our prompt with one reference image, and I find it doesn't work as well either. As an input, somehow I get a stronger level of consistency by giving Midjourney more to look at. And
Hmm.
I'm not sure like why that is, right? But it's like these are just very different than each other in comparison to the 100C weight one that we had before. Whereas, these are a little bit different, but it's like mostly lighting and turning their head.
Okay. So you're saying if you use like more reference images of the same character to generate like a consistent character, it works better.
Yeah. And probably the reason for that, right, is because it has more to look at, right? Like while it's generating anything, it can kind of go in, piece together what it notices about what you've created, and then like go from there. And being able to like look at the nose from one angle and also the other angle, right? The left side and the right side just helps it create what it's after.
Hmm.
Um, and that's harder, right? When you're using non-real people. I don't know if you've right if like I was the thumbnail for the stream I think is this lady here.
Hmm.
And like how do you get four character references of the same person that
Yeah. Do you want to go over how you made these images,
I
the thumbnail images?
what's with the googly eyes? Sorry. Someone posted in chat and I'm not sure where the googly eyes probably these faces that they're very like staring at the camera. I probably did a little bit of that. It's just a little too bright in the room where I took this. But also, I think that might have something to do with how I called this, that it's sort of making the eyes a little bit big. And that might be a way to improve this prompt still. Because it does seem like something that's happening in both the image in here and the image in or the image in the park and the image in the gym. But yeah, let's talk about how to create sort of a new character when you don't have reference images. And for that, I tend to generate a here. How did I do this? Give me 1 second. I just need to figure out. There we go. Okay, so I use this GPT again because I find it very handy, but I generate a grid of a character that is close to the one that I'm after. And to get a prompt for that grid, I tend to go to this GPT because it simply saves me time. So if I wanted to create,
Yeah, so basically in Midjourney, one thing you can do instead of generating like four images that kind of look the same, you could just generate one image that's split into a grid of images, kind of like if you're taking, or if you're taking like a passport photo, and they'll split that photo into like four images on the same photo, right? You can actually generate like four images of the same person inside a single Midjourney image, and those tend to be a lot more similar to each other than if you were to generate the images separately.
and so the prompt that this writes for me based on kind of my suggestions here is a 6 panel photo collage of a young lady with sort of the details I added in front of a plain solid background with studio lighting. And then I also added a lot, or it also added a lot of these pieces that maybe make it a little bit more, make the character a little less Midjourney esque and a little bit more like a regular person. And so if I generate this image, it creates a 16:9 grid with a bunch of copies of the character that I've asked for.
So it's like a character sheet.
It's like a character sheet. The idea is that they tend to be slightly different rotations. So if one of these characters is like closer to the one I like, I might vary it in strong just to try to get different, or actually it might not have been asked for in this
Yeah, did you
specific
ask for like
prompt.
different camera angles and
Yeah. It doesn't matter too much how different they are, I've found, but I think a little bit different is important. Um,
because yeah, the ones on the bottom all kind of look like the same photo.
yeah. And it still basically
That's kind of
does.
weird. I haven't seen that
Though
before.
this one is pretty, it like while it looks like the same photo, she's actually facing a little bit different in each of these, and I think it's enough to kind of create our character references. What we're gonna do to get the highest quality version of these, that's strange. I've seen that before, but not that often. Sometimes it just, oh, it is gonna work. Never mind. I'm gonna cancel this.
So are you using the upscale subtle or the upscale creative?
I used upscale subtle first, and it you can use either. It just depends on how much you're willing to let it change. Uh, I thought this one was close enough to exactly what I want, but the thing I want to say before we kind of start generating this character is the person that we get out of the result of these might not look exactly like this person that we've generated. The idea is that they are consistent with each other. So this is not a final generation. Midjourney treats grids a certain way, and they're going to treat final generations a certain way too. This is just to keep that input the same, and it's going to be close, right? This is going to be the character that we get, but if we have a similar prompt format and a similar a similar prompt format and a similar or the same character reference in each of our generations, we can kind of expect that Midjourney will treat the the prompt the same way and generate the same character in that specific situation that we're talking about. And so
How are you doing that, by the way? Are you just using like a snip tool and then
that's exactly right.
copy and
So
pasting?
in Windows, the snipping tool here, I'll pull it up so you guys can see it. Um, is easy to access. I just hit the Windows key, start typing snip, and this shows up as something that I can use. When I click new, it gives me the option to drag a little box around my character, and that shows up here. And I just right click and copy this image and put it into Midjourney. And then if I click character reference on each of these, this will treat Midjourney will treat it as a character reference. I'm just going to go back
Okay.
to ChatGPT for a second. Sorry. And this is zoomed in a little too much for because or it's cut off a little. No, it's all right. So let's just to kind of get this going. It's keeping the prompt format that hey, Emrit, this is just to kind of catch you and anybody else who hasn't been here for a while up. We're doing a live workshop, kind of a deep dive into consistent characters. If you guys have any questions on how to use like the consistent character options within Midjourney, feel free to ask them in chat. Otherwise, we are just kind of going to walk through a lot of the different situations that we've run into in our time. So this YouTube channel is on Mac. You can use Command 4 to copy region for pasting. I believe you. I don't have a Mac, so I don't know, but that should work just fine. If Command 4 typically copies, then you can just paste it right in here, or if you can download that copy region and then you can just drag it from your files into your browser, and that'll work too. But the idea is that lots of people have trouble with this, and we want to take the time to kind of go through all the little pieces that normally get skipped when we make sort of a 10-minute YouTube video. And this way we can kind of talk about the things that are a little more challenging. And so these images here are kind of my lady, and it doesn't match exactly the sort of polished version that I got here, but it's a character that actually all four of these look pretty similar to each other. And more importantly, if we generate another scene, we can, let's do, sure, vibrant street market. It'll
I think
continue
that's
to
something that
look
happens a
different.
lot when you're using the consistent character feature, is that compared to the reference images, the generated images might not look super similar to them, but the generated images will look similar to each other.
Yeah.
It looks like you didn't use the
You're absolutely right. So one of the things that I forgot to do that is important if you're generating lots of the same character, click this little lock button right here so it doesn't go away between your images. So this is sort of what the prompt would typically look like without a character reference, and it's close, right? So you can kind of see that my prompt has a similar amount of like freckles and smile and like sort of the weight of the character, sort of the body type, sort of the different, the kind of like way the hair frills. The prompt does kind of similar things, but the character references will be a second input to make sure that when you generate them, not only do they kind of have the same vibe, but they're actually going to like reference this information, right? The kind of hazel eyes that this character has, the way that maybe her sundress looks and the way she smiles. And suddenly this new version, and these do get in the way a little bit, but this new version in the street market still look just about the same as each other, even and just about the same as the same lady in the park. Now, one of the problems that you get when you do it this way, you tend to run into like, I actually wanted more of a scene than this, right? It's like I have a similar prompt and a similar character reference. Now all my pictures look like I'm looking straight ahead, right?
Hmm.
Um, do you have anything you do when that shows up?
Yeah, well, I think basically all of the reference images that we used are shot from the same exact camera angle. And so because of that, when you use those reference images to generate images of characters, it's gonna basically replicate the same exact camera angle. So I think I'd be curious to see what happens if you use those five reference images and then try to do like a side angle shot or shot from below or something like that. My guess is that it would just generate images all facing directly from the front. I think that might be one of the reasons why if you're generating a consistent character, like if you use just one photo reference, for example, it would probably give you more leeway in the direction that the generated images or the camera angle in the generated images would be. But if you use like multiple reference images all shot from the same exact camera angle, then you're going to be pretty restricted, I would guess. I mean, it looks like it actually does a decent job of putting her from the side, so that's actually kind of surprising to me.
And so when it's not perfect, it's a little bit to the side, but it's not necessarily a side profile. We can try again with a slightly different prompt. um,
I mean, I think those look pretty good
yeah,
for the side profiles. Like in Midjourney, it's gonna be hard to get like a perfect side, like
that's
90-degree side profile shot.
that's absolutely true. One of the things I do to kind of also add some visual intrigue to the image is this new update. The editor makes this really easy. It used to be actually quite a bit harder, but you can put your character into a scene somewhere, and then I'm going to actually take out the character references because we already know, or we sort of already
So how
have
did
what
you
the
do that?
character
How
looked
did you
like.
just expand the sides?
Sure. So let's open a different one or the same one from here. So on the over here we have sort of two options. We can go and use the scale slider right here, or
Hmm.
you can drag the little bars right here on the sides and top, right? So there's bars that let you sort of change the crop of the image you're creating, and
So it'll fill in the gray region for
it'll
you.
it'll fill in everything that looks checkered. And if you don't like certain parts of even this image, you can kind of potentially erase them, and then this part is checkered too, right? So once you've kind of like gotten to the point where you're happy, you can then write a new prompt, and suddenly you have a more interesting frame for the image you're generating. And now you can say a woman smiling in a flower shop. And I'm going to take out these character references because her face is already generated, and the parts of her that's really important for this image, I'm going to add that she's wearing a yellow sundress. And maybe also add, I think that it's enough.
Yeah.
I'm gonna submit this image and let this generate, because you actually don't need a ton of details when the face of your character is already in shot. And you know they put her holding a flower or holding a bouquet of some kind, and I thought it came out. I think it came out really
Yeah,
well.
I think those came out really well.
And obviously, you can go back to your same editor that you edited last time and change the aspect ratio, or even pick a particular aspect ratio that you want, and still drag and have, because you may not have wanted it to be 91 by 51. That may not be useful to you, but 16 by 9 is a YouTube thumbnail.
So it looks like all the sundresses have a little bit of a variance in them. Like they have some different patterns and colors on them.
Yeah.
Is there any way to keep those the same?
Um, there's a couple ways. Probably the simplest is actually to keep your character reference a little bit longer. And the second is to describe the prompt as you go. So let's go ahead with this one. And even though I know I'm going to go out to a view like that, I actually want this prompt to, or this character to actually still be referenced, because this dress looks a certain way in these character references. So I'm actually going to go ahead and submit this just like this, and it'll show more closer to a full body view of our character standing in front of a cozy cafe with wooden tables in the background. And then after this is done, we can come back and make it bigger. And even just with this, all four of these dresses, they're not identical, but it wouldn't know what to do with the bottom half of this dress because
Yeah.
it wasn't in the character reference. So it's just doing, it's just the same input and the same output, and you get a lot closer to like a consistent look, right? It's maybe not perfect if you also described it while you did that, right? If we come back to what the image that I chose, and these look so similar, it's sort of impressive.
I think that's the
I
one.
think this is the one.
So can you try generating it without the character references attached just to see what happens?
Yeah, to kind of show the difference. I think this will do different things. They might be tank tops. They might be, or I guess it may have written the sundress. No, it didn't. But one of the things I can, right? So like sometimes she's, wearing pants. Sometimes she's wearing a jumpsuit. Sometimes, and it's just not consistent. But what's even better than kind of not doing, or then taking out the character references, actually I want to copy the prompt before I go. So I'm just going to click here, copy prompt, so I can get the images back into the editor here. And so now if I come here and paste, the images come right back, which could save you a lot of time. Can you use the blank backgrounds to create other characters? Yeah, you could edit them out in the editor and start again to create more. I find it's easier to generate it from scratch. It sort of does a better job like going into a blank background, but we can absolutely use this space to create other characters. And we can actually do that with this character in a second, because I think that could be cool. So what I wanted to do first before we got to that was actually describe our dress a little bit plainly. So we could say a young woman.
I think that kind of looks like a tank top, to be honest.
But if we call it a plain yellow sundress with, and you can describe sort of anything you want about it, sort of a corduroy texture. Is that how you spell corduroy? It's not complaining at me, I guess. I feel like I know it's wrong, but I'm letting
I have no idea.
letting it go for it. It can fill in those details here. But yeah, this is one of the cool things about, and now all three of these with a described version, at least 3 out of 4 of them are pretty much the same thing. And I'd say that's probably the best approach, is to both have the character reference in there and describe the style you were going for. But what's cool, and I'll just go into my organization, we can use the character from the thumbnail. I'm going to copy actually this prompt, and we can actually put our character right next to her in the same image, because right here in the editor, if I say this, and now I'm going to delete all of these and paste the prompt I just copied. Now I have Sierra, our character from the thumbnail, and I could put her, two girls, I'll say young women, standing in front of a coffee shop with wooden tables behind them. And I have to take out the aspect ratio because it doesn't match what you've done in the editor. And even though I copied it, it doesn't support it.
Okay, so in this case, you didn't end up describing the clothing that the other girl is wearing, but it should probably still look at the reference photos and copy that, right?
It'll use the reference photos and copy them pretty well. I find this character's photos or this character's clothing tends to be pretty recognizable on their own.
Mhm.
And if not perfect, this is still the character that we had before, as well as the new character next to them. I may actually go back, and I think I would prefer to not give quite as much space.
Like you mean you just want to generate the upper body?
Oh yeah, I actually did want to come from wherever I started. So did I do that here? Here. I just didn't I wanted the two people to be closer together. So
Okay.
I'm gonna kind of give them a little bit more chance because I think that'll be helpful for the next thing I want to do.
Okay, so you're shrinking the aspect ratio in the generated image. And by doing that, by using like a narrower image, it should put them closer together.
By using a narrower image and also cutting away a little bit of the other lady, we should, and so it's just about done, we should get them closer together. And now they actually look like they're in the same scene together rather than like in different parts of the image. And what I think is actually really cool, one of my favorite parts of the new editor, if I want to take these characters and actually keep going, and just for fun, we'll copy maybe this prompt. Doesn't really matter.
You want adding a third character?
I want to add a third character, but like eventually you start to go outside the bounds of what Midjourney is good at, right? But if you come in to the editor and actually take this character, drag her out of the image, and have Sierra sort of sit next to my new character, and we'll get rid of these and paste her in. Actually, reset prompt. Here, I'm just gonna go like this, and I'm just gonna erase a little bit.
Okay, but your goal is to put all three of them inside the same image. But you think that
I think
if you
it's
try to generate,
oh,
if you try to generate the new character with the original two characters in the image, it would be too much for Midjourney to process.
it would be too much for Midjourney to process and do a good job on all three of them. So what I'm doing instead is keeping my aspect ratio essentially square, and adding her in right here. And then instead of putting them in the same character within Midjourney, I can open up literally any photo editor. We'll use, of course, Photoshop because that's what I have. I think I have this scene for showing off Photoshop. Hopefully you guys can see everything that you want to, but you don't have to look at all my things. So we'll create a new file here. And I just have a, oops, create the landscape version of that file. Give me 1 second. And we can start piecing these together. So what's cool, let me come back to Chrome and we'll take whichever of these is our favorite. I think this one. We'll download it and we'll download it next to the matching one here. So I think it's
Yeah, it's that one.
this one here. And we'll download this. We can actually have a line. Sorry, I have to like open up my downloads to support this but we have 2 photos here. And these photos will fit perfectly next to each other. So this one is on top. And you're going to find that as we get to exactly the right spot, it lines up just perfectly. And I'm just going to go.
I think our heads are blocking the screen share a little bit.
Our heads are blocking the screen share. Let me just go over here.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell that those are 2 images merged together. So
yeah, it should be impossible to tell because there's no option for a seam. And actually, you don't have to stop there, right? You could keep going down a big long line, which I may have an example for you.
we just kept adding on characters.
Just kept adding on characters. And just a second. All of these characters are generated in Midjourney, and you can kind of go with one, go, and all of your characters can fit together in one nice long image. And because you're staying close together, Midjourney lets you kind of combine them all. And I feel like that's a powerful way to do it. And obviously, if we come back to Chrome, you can sort of see where all of these came from, right? So I like started with the guy, the baby, and then put the baby next to someone, then put the guy next to someone, then this guy next to another prompt. It took me a little bit to get the prompt that worked, and then kept working my way down the lineup until I had something that I liked. And it was very easy to splice those together and create kind of that nice long lineup of what seems like an infinite image that really wasn't possible until that editor came out.
Mm-hmm. One thing that reminds me of is have you seen these viral images of like a celebrity with their arm around the shoulder of the younger version of themselves? Like Will Smith next to old Will Smith,
Yeah,
AI generated, animated into a video.
that does sound neat. I'm not sure
Yeah,
I
I
have
get
seen one of
asked a lot
those.
of questions of how to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I think it'd be interesting if someone wanted to do it for themselves. I'm not sure if I want to like be supporting the deep faking of, unless somebody wants like specifically it to be done for them. But we could certainly do something like that with our own character, right? So, we could imagine what this character might look like when she was either younger or older. Like we could do the old
Hmm.
lady version of this character. And probably even ChatGPT be willing to create a grid for what you think this character will look like at age, we'll say 65.
So will this describe like how the facial features are changing and
Um,
the different hair colors?
Probably not super accurately, but right, I think that because again, like our inputs, we may be able to mix the inputs together a little bit too. But so I'll take, I can rerun this until I feel like I have one that matches my character pretty well. I actually think this one is pretty close to what she might look like. But
Will this work if you use a reference image of the younger girl and then prompt for it to be older?
probably with a low enough character weight, right? So we could probably generate this prompt and these character references, and then said even like 20. We might get something that is closer. Can a consistent background be created? If you want an exactly consistent background, you're welcome to just use the editor, right? You can take someone out and replace them with something else, and then the background is identical. Otherwise, I would say the best thing to do is to create probably so even at CW10, it doesn't make her that old, unfortunately. So what I
Okay,
would,
in the prompt, does it, I can't see the prompt that clearly, but it does it like say white hair and like wrinkled skin on the
yeah,
face?
light puffy brown hair with strands of gray, soft smile, yellow sundress, and so it's like the same idea. But what I think I'm gonna do instead is actually mix together some of these character references, and I'm not positive this will work perfectly, but like we'll take this one and add it in, and go again, taking here this one, add it in, and so now we have two more character references, and potentially, and just for I'm just gonna do a here.
Okay, so you think this will blend them together?
I think that this will blend them together, maybe. Let's kind of use this prompt. Oh, did I lose them? I should have generated. Okay. I want two more of these. Give me just 1 second. I'm not positive. This isn't something I've experimented with before, but right, I think these inputs will let us create maybe not someone this old, but someone more adult than our original. Different angles on the same background for the characters. Yeah. I'll show you how to do that in a little bit, Henri, because I think that's an interesting question that I want to do justice for. But probably the best explanation, quickly, for your answer is that I would extend the scene just like we were doing with multiple characters, but use the editor to grow your scene and then chop them up and then edit on top of the different parts of the same place. And that'll get you the closest. Let's see. So I want to do one more of these. No, let's find. I'm curious.
I think you didn't attach the all of them as character references, it
Oh,
looks like.
that's an excellent point.
Might still work though.
Probably not.
Okay, yeah, I think attaching them as all character references helps
Yeah.
with transferring the features over.
And so obviously, like, you don't get quite perfect, right? So yeah, but this is sort of two older versions and one younger version. I think looks probably the closest. And then I would kind of create this image down with the editor so that we have a little bit more of this lady, and then edit again to have them sit together. or standing alongside each other.
Hmm. Do you find it hard to do like multiple characters interacting with each other in a more dynamic way?
More dynamically than like standing like on one
Yeah,
side or
yeah,
the
like
other. Yeah, I find it a little bit of a pain. Probably the best way to do that, and I will, Henri, get a little bit closer to your background question. So I'm gonna do this real quick to kind of make it happen. Um, I'm just gonna delete these and say a photo of a lady sitting next to a younger version of herself. Um, yeah, so a more dynamic pose for consistent characters, I would tend to, and this isn't quite perfect. Again, I should probably not give them quite so much room to make her bigger than the other one.
mhm.
But you kind of get the idea of how I might approach that. As far as in action poses, I would generate an image first and then use the editor to place our characters into that part of the scene. So if, for instance, I did something like two boxers in a fighting match or a photo of
Maybe two female boxers if you're going to use.
sure, as a more complex like situation. And let's see. I would add
Yeah, maybe you put in like inside a boxing ring or something like that. It'll render like a wider angle.
Oh, Enrique, thank you so much for your $3. That means a lot. I appreciate the donation.
Maybe like adding like that they're wearing
Yeah,
shorts or something like
I
that.
feel like this one is probably a good approach for kind of what we want to do, because this is sort of the level of consistent that we're going for. And now, kind of now that we like have one of our characters, we could even do this one here. So I will copy this prompt. Where's the one I liked? So what I'll essentially do is erase the pieces of the prompt that definitely have to change, and it'll include like her like skin tight or skin clothing, and then also her eyes, her like main cheek area. But it's important that her like the general angle she is looking does look correct. So I have to like keep enough of. I'm using right click right now to change the size of this brush, by the way. Enough of her face that I do need to change her hair color, but I want to use enough, make sure I keep enough of her face that it's obvious which way she's facing. And then I'm going to paste in this image and just say, um, two young women boxing in a boxing ring. So if I submit this here, we're going to be able, or we should see kind of what I erased from her face get replaced with details that match Ilara. Did this generate? Let me refresh. No, it didn't.
No, I don't think you ran it.
That's too bad. Okay. Take two. Sorry, friends.
So you try to do it like in just one fell swoop instead of doing it like in pieces, like changing the hair first and then changing the eyes.
Yeah, I've tried that, and that used to be the best approach. But with character weight, I find that it comes, or it's pretty effective to, or yeah, with character reference existing, it's pretty effective to kind of change everything about the character at once. It sort of figures out the clothes, figures out the face, and if there's any problems, I can go in and make the changes again. And I kind of want to get rid of a lot because I don't think it's really her skin tone even. So I really just want enough that it's obvious which way she's facing, but not enough that it uses any details about this character.
Hmm.
Whoops.
Okay, that looks pretty good.
And so now it's kind of got this character in this boxing scene. Obviously, she's a medieval merchant. She doesn't really fit very well in the boxing scene, so it changes some things about her that typically I would have leave alone. And also her skin tone, right? Like I left enough skin tone that I maybe would have wanted to find an image that I liked with a skin tone that was closer to hers or described sort of a pale lady in my original image so that I could leave skin that matched a little bit more closely. But once I have this scene, I could put the back of Sierra in the same situation, and I think it would go pretty smoothly. So if I kind of um, find an image of her, copy this prompt, create, I could certainly.
Yeah, it might be hard to do the shot from behind if the character references are facing us. That's what I found is that it kind of generates the face in like a super distorted way.
Yeah, and so I am not going to erase enough that it's able to do her face. That's sort of why I had Sierra, because she sort of already has this like black hair and fringe. And I want to leave enough of her like details that it doesn't try to generate her face, if that makes sense. Right.
Hmm.
I really just want it to like fix her hair, right? And make it seem a little bit closer to how she looks. And so
Okay.
if I erase these character references and paste in Sierra, I think it'll do an okay job at just fitting her into this image a little bit. And I may have to do a second round for this image. Or it may have done nothing at all. It is
Yeah, I find
actually
that
it is actually
it,
closer. So if I also kind of do, I may have missed kind of getting her clothes, um, and it may do. And I may try this too. And this, I think, is actually, even though it's blurred and interesting, it pretty reliably does something of the quality that we were after.
okay, well, it gets the leather jacket correct.
Yeah. And,
I do think that in the original image,
mhm.
before doing the inpainting, if you describe the characteristics of the two women
Yeah.
to be more similar to the character references,
I
that
definitely
would have gotten
I definitely
close similar results.
think that would help. Yes. But I also think, or in general, I find that Midjourney is more likely to generate a dynamic pose if you're not using CREF, because if we just did this kind of straight, we would get something. Obviously, it would probably use this character twice, um, because it's trying to generate a consistent or using CREF on both of them. So she's like facing herself in a duel, which is kind of funky.
Hmm.
But it's just not as dynamic in my, it's like this is a much more interesting scene than this or this is.
What about if you used a lower character weight?
I'll try 10 and 20 or 10 and 30
Hmm.
maybe, just to kind of
Hmm.
give it a chance.
Well, it changes the color palette a lot, but yeah, you're right. It doesn't look as realistic
Of a
of a
pose or
photo of two
scene.
people boxing.
And so, like in the thumbnail, we actually have Sierra in like a dancer's and a boxing pose. So if we kind of look at how I created that dancing pose, I did actually like start with just her, but I was really very close to like, hey, let's do just her face with her arms up. It was like it starts very simple, and once I wanted the pose to be more interesting than something as simple as this, then I took away the character reference immediately because it's much more likely to kind of do it. And then later on, um, to get the clothes matching between these two variations, I actually brought the character reference back in to have her running or you know boxing or dancing.
So you use the character references to generate the head and torso area. And then once you got that down, you expanded the image to include the rest of the body.
Yeah, without and though so I grabbed this character reference so that they would match each other in the thumbnail just for the clothes.
Hmm.
So I took a clothes version that I liked, and then once her face was already generated, I was like, okay, use this character reference and use these clothes so that this boxer matched right with that character reference matched the dancer that I ended up using, which I think was this one. So I just copied this image and used it as a character reference to fix her clothes.
Okay, is that a good way to keep the clothing consistent? Like if you did that where they're jogging or working out in a gym or something, could you get her wearing the same clothing like that?
Um, After I've generated her face, right?
Hmm.
So if I wanted her to be wearing that in like this scene,
Hmm.
right? I could go to the editor, delete these, paste it, and then show a little bit more of her and do this with her clothes, and it would regenerate her clothes to be hopefully appropriate.
Hmm.
Mostly.
Yeah, maybe you need to get more of the body.
Oh, I didn't do a character reference. I did a
Oh, okay.
sorry about that. I did an image prompt, which will not do it. Which one was
Yeah,
it?
the image prompts back in the day used to be able to work decently for consistent characters if you did just the faces.
Yeah, but you still needed quite a few of them.
Hmm.
And like I would break it down into like parts of the I'd go as detailed as like, oh, this is what the eyes should look like, and then just erase the eyes and try. And Very Region was definitely critical to kind of making that happen. So yeah, it's not totally perfect, but the one I did like, I could then edit again, and I think this one is sort of like ready to fix. I can make them. It'll like at least one of these, it'll make pants. And mentioning the costume or the clothes that I want, and literally in the prompt, it'd probably make them happen. Though I guess this one is actually the most correct
Yeah, that
for
looks
this
pretty good,
exact for
honestly.
this exact image.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, Enrique did ask a little bit about consistent backgrounds, and I think I just want to talk a little bit about, something like this, right? If you want to kind of create this forest, I would go into the editor and say, hey, this is the magical forest, and then use pan to kind of keep parts of it as you go, right? And so then you can put your characters, no edits made, right? Here, let's do 16 by 9. Nope, 9 by, yeah. You can put your characters in different parts of the images that you create. And you don't even have to splice them together with Photoshop, right? You can generate one depending on what you get. So I have to let this finish.
So are you planning to use the Inpainting tool to add them in there?
Yeah, I'm planning to use the editor to put a character in, but just to begin by creating the scene itself. You can come along the
Hmm.
editor and do different parts of the scene this way.
Okay. So you're gonna
And
make like an ultra wide panel and then add your
essentially,
character in different
I'm going
parts.
to use the ultra wide panel, and I can sort of keep going if there's one of these that I like, right? If this is close enough, right? Like actually, this background editor may lead to a magical tree on this side, and actually would fit very nicely in the same scene. And you can kind of like keep editing and do this as well. And suddenly you have like quite a bit of background that looks different, but also kind of the same.
Would this work if you also prompted with a really wide aspect ratio, like a tree in a forest with an AR of like 10:1 or something like that?
Yeah. So I find that as your AI AR gets bigger and bigger, Midjourney is just like not as good at doing it. I don't know how far it's going to let me. There, that's as far as it's going to let me. And so we can look at the difference between this creation and which is just wild, 128 to 9, um and something like,
So it kind of loses the consistency.
yeah, it does something that isn't the same. And also this has no resolution. So then if you take this back into the editor, and because what you want to do now is you want to crop the part of the image you want to make, right? And this looks like nothing, right? As you kind of drag
Yeah, it looks like
around.
underwater or something.
Yeah, this is not nearly as useful a scene as you might want, but all of these, right, are, you can kind of pick the one that's the winner, and it kind of matches something with these other ones, and you can kind of keep them in the background. This might not be the perfect example to put characters into, but you can put your character right into a scene like this, or if you don't want them to be kind of this low, you can, right, like really what do you need for a background? You need something closer to this, and right, and let's restore some, right? But
Yeah, you can now use the zooming feature, right? Where it lets you basically zooming on one portion of the background
one
that
portion
you
of
want
the
to focus
background and
on.
then generate something in here. And this feels like a correct background compared to the one you had in from the other scene, or even, right, like, or even, some other part in this scene exactly, right? Like you can go here, 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 and here, and it feels like they're talking to each other because like it is part of the same scene. And moving around like that, I think, is the best way to make that happen.
You want to try that? You want to try a dialogue between the two characters you had?
Yeah, it seems worth it. So let's copy any of these prompts, right? So I'm gonna come actually open this up. I'm gonna click copy prompt, and so we can say, hey, this scene here with this character in the middle looks like this. And you could potentially have a
Yeah, I wonder if
lady.
it's going to be able to get the full body down, since the reference images show just the upper head, the head and the torso.
Yeah. I would probably want to do this first, wouldn't I? Right? Potentially like this is my scene, actually.
Hmm.
And I do actually like to start just because this is how this particular image worked. But I do tend to like to start with the sort of close up version. So this isn't actually the perfect scene example for this situation because we're starting ground floor. So there may be a better one to kind of use as a starting point. But
Yeah, it looks like her feet are missing. That one actually looks okay.
yeah.
Although
But
it's kind of interesting that it didn't copy her clothing over.
yeah, I'm not sure why that happened. Oh, we have the low character weight. It's for whatever reason I copied a prompt that had CW30, which I think explains that. Um, but I do notice something when I generate the full body of somebody, and that's you sort of get these like plasticky, like you don't really see the eyes version. And being able to zoom in actually enables something to let you fix that, right? Because once you've generated this part of the image, you can then vary region. And if you're not changing anything else, right, you can make a change like this and actually fix her face. And then in Photoshop, again, it's relatively easy to line it up and place it right into the same spot you were and have a higher quality version of your generated face. Right, instead of kind of this plasticky version.
Yeah, it does seem like the smaller the faces in the area of the entire image, the worse it looks.
And so even I might go again, right? I might actually crop this, and Midjourney doesn't actually let you crop more than that. But I think I would prefer if this was like my style of change. But it doesn't support full cropping, so I have to do it piece by piece. So
By the way, what do you think of the zooming feature? Do you think it preserves the quality? I found that like using the zooming feature, it actually kind of just it doesn't seem to upsample the quality as much as I'd hoped.
yeah,
It
I
doesn't.
don't think it upsamples it at all. I think the only thing it does is, like here I just cropped in. All it really does is give you the option to then open it up in the editor again. And have Midjourney generate something new. I think it's not actually making changes during this crop action. It's only making changes if you have something for it to do. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
Um, and so if you wanted to Photoshop something in, by the way, you should never edit the edges because otherwise it won't fit perfectly. But now if I submit this, her face will be quite a bit, even this looking like this, you still get the kind of plasticky version of her eyelids. But now, as we're like even closer, I'd expect we get something a little bit better. It's actually not that impressive. I do have an
Maybe you could try
example for when
upscaling that.
I do have an example for when that worked. Yeah, we can upscale creative and see if that makes it better, but let's see. While that happens, I'm going to look for what I did. We covered a lot today as I scroll through all the things we've done. Um, yeah, so this character here, like, she gets this tear and broken bit around the eyes. I cropped once and then I cropped again to get just a close up version, and then editing it, it gets really a quite good fix using the editor on whichever one of these I did. Uh, I guess it doesn't save my editor cache from yesterday, but with an upscale, I think this does solve this problem. Um,
Yeah, it does still look a little photo brushed.
yeah,
Um,
I think that tends to happen. And also, if you had to zoom, if you had to put it back into this scene, it might need to be right. You're making it pretty low resolution at that point.
mhm.
So I guess we've
Do you
been.
want to talk about
Yeah,
non-humanoid characters?
yeah. I think we can kind of do that as a last thing. I feel like we've been streaming for about 2 hours, and I want to make sure we're able to download this VOD. So let's go ahead and kind of look at the owl that we had in our first example. Um, Luckily, actually, I think we're gonna the best thing to say is that character reference is not designed for this. Like, I think using a cref to create something as complex as like a specific kind of owl, you're going to want to also, I think it sort of comes from the things we talked about before. If we kind of go into the consistent character assistant and create this, go again, please create a grid for an owl detective for me. I would
What
say
version of ChatGPT is this, by the way?
I think that all GPTs at the moment are using GPT 4.0
Okay.
detective. And so that's the one that's happening. And I think even people who don't have like a paid ChatGPT account are now able to use or to get at least a certain number of custom GPT assistants. So I'll put the links to this. I'll put the link to this GPT in the chat if I can. Oh, I'm not like signed in there. Hang on. If anybody needs this, there it is. I'll also put in the description later if you're in the future. But I'm going to ask this custom GPT to specify some things that I think will help the quality of our result. And so, specifically, I think the species of owl will be important to be in the prompt. Um,
Maybe the colors.
Feather, colors slash pattern, and then talk about the or choose a specific hat for the character to be wearing.
Yeah, maybe like even like the facial shape and the structure.
Yeah, it may not be able to put that into words very well, but we're going to start with the collage. We're going to place this into here, and then we're also going to come back into ChatGPT and ask for please create 5 prompts for this owl doing classic detective things. Add the same details.
Do you always use this ChatGPT when you're prompting for characters?
I find it just makes it a lot faster.
Hmm.
Creating a grid like this and like I would have to do quite a bit of research to figure out a species of owl that I can consistently get. Whereas, here suddenly we're like, this is very. Have you seen Phineas and Perry the Platypus uh, style hat and vibe, which I think is very fun. Um,
Hmm.
sorry. And so now we have a kind of a character reference, and we can come back to ChatGPT and take either or any of these prompts, and we start to kind of get.
So does it, when you generate a new prompt for a different scene, so it copies over like all the facial details of species, everything like that?
Yeah, I specifically asked it to in this case. Typically
Hmm.
for humans, I simplify the description of the person. But to get the owl to actually look the same, you're going to want a lot more details. So I said add the same details as we added into this collage prompt into the creation so that not only does it kind of have these references, it has enough information to clearly describe the hat and the like shape and kind of owl that it is. Because
Wow.
if you don't add those details, right? If I just did this and said owl, yeah, photo of an owl detective, and it might be enough, but I find that it'll probably create something that isn't nearly as consistent, right? Like it doesn't necessarily use the same type of owl
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
Like
the
see
first
how
looks a
it
little
it
different.
doesn't know enough about owls in its training data without the words associated with it to pick it up in character reference. Probably because it's been designed on like faces and noses and all those things that owls don't really have exactly the same vibes of. But being able to kind of carefully describe some of those things, you end up getting a lot closer.
Hmm. Do you find the order of the details in the prompt matters? Like if you like there's one thing where people talk about how if you put words closer to the start of the prompt, they're going to be weighed more heavily by Midjourney.
Yeah, I find that that's not as true anymore. I think that before version 6, exactly how you phrase the prompt, you know, like it does matter a little, but it's in the same amount that like it matters in sentences. I think like if you want to create a photo, I describe what kind of image you're creating and then what the image is of. And then after that, kind of the order of what you put in doesn't matter nearly as much. And so, these that form of prompting I've sort of taught my couple GPTs so that they kind of get that right. And then, Midjourney tends to do a good job using the details as well as using the like specific of the subject and medium.
Hmm.
Um, Before we go, do you want to just kind of remind people where they can find your channel, and then we can kind of wrap up?
Yeah, sure. You can find me at Tell Prompts. I do some similar content as Glibbertree with Midjourney content, but also AI videos if you're interested in things like that.
I'll put the link um, to your channel in
I'm
the
really
chat as
surprised at how
well.
good this owl turned out, to be honest. Like all the details, the way the
Yeah,
eyes look.
yeah, and I think it's especially good when we have our Eastern Screech Owl. I think like getting every little detail of it, it turned out very well. Thank you all who came to the stream, and thank you all who are watching in the future. I thought this turned out very well, and I'll probably edit some of this down, some of this information down, so it ends up into one or maybe more videos on my channel. And I think you're planning on doing the same, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we
Perfect.
covered a lot.
We did absolutely cover a lot. So yeah, thank you all for stopping by, and well,